Jonathan, pronouns are he, him in Arizona, has a question for me. So welcome, Jonathan.
Hey, Matt and Jim. The question that I posed was, does Matt generalize Christians?
Because what it says here is, do I generalize theists?
I'm sorry. Maybe it was theist. Maybe I said theist with the call screener.
Sure. So the answer to both is yes. On the theism thing, of course, it's quick and easy, and that is a theist is someone who believes in a God. That's just definitional. So generalizing at that level is not a big deal. And then there's subsets of theism where people believe in a variety of different gods. Within Christianity in particular, there's a variety of different orthodox positions, and I do make distinctions between, like Protestant and Catholic. But there are times where it's completely fair to generalize. It would be fair to say that if you're a Christian and you don't believe that Jesus Christ is the living, risen Son of God, you're probably an incredibly non-standard Christian, and it would be a mistake to take what you say as if it represented Christians, where there's no group that is utterly homogenous. So yeah, of course I'm going to generalize.
Sure, and I agree with all that. The reason I'm asking this particular question is actually in relation to a call that you took on the line with Seth Andrews. It was on September 13th of 2020, and it just came out on YouTube, this particular clip, a couple weeks ago, and I happened to watch that clip. And the caller's name was Omar, and he said that you've actually generalized Christians to be flat earthers, which you obviously adamantly denied. Does this ring a bell? Or
I don't remember that call, but I can adamantly deny it again, that never in my life when I was a Christian or since I've left Christianity did I view all Christians as if they were flat earthers or generally as flat earthers. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't generalize any of them to be flat earthers. I'm always shocked when any of them are actually flat earthers. However, what I have done is talk about how the Bible has passages that support the notion of a flat earth, the idea that there's a single tree from which you can see the entirety of the world. You would have to interpret that as the world being, the 12 to 20 mile radius circle, and that they could have been engaged in some hyperbole. But there's literally no way on an oblate spheroid for there to be a spot with a tree that can see the entire world. And when it talks about the Bible, when it talks about the earth being staged in the firmament upon pillars with this, it could just be poetry, but it also could support a notion of a flat earth. But I've never, ever, ever thought that Christians generally think the earth is flat. I'm always shocked when anybody thinks the earth is flat, because that is demonstrably false. Whereas whether or not a God exists is still subject to providing evidence as an open question.
Mm-hmm. And for the most part, excluding the biblical examples that you just gave, that was roughly the answer that you gave to Omar as well. And you had to repeat to him, I think like 6 or 7 times, because he kept trying to talk over you, that you said, I've never even suggested that Christian theists are flat earthers. And the funny thing is, and it's coincidental that Jim is co-hosting with you, and I'm glad, because on February 9th of the same year, I called in and I spoke with you and Jim, and I don't know if you remember this one, but at the end, like we had a philosophical discussion of thought crime, and then at the end of the call, you actually, because religion never came up, so I'm sure the viewers, even in the comments, the viewers didn't know that if I was a Christian or an atheist. But before I got off the phone with you wanted to make sure that the audience knew I was a Christian. And you said, here's a Christian theist who called in. We had a discussion about thought crime and about beliefs, and came to an agreement on all that, and didn't bring up religion at all. And then you said, I thought it was funny, then you said, somebody call Guinness, because this is not a show that just wants to hate and beat up on Christians. But before that, you asked me, you said, Jonathan, you're a Christian. And I said, yes. And you said, oh, okay. You said, is science real? And then once I understood your question, I said, yes, I believe what, the scientific community teaches. Then you said, is the earth roughly 4 to 6 billion years old, or 6 to 10,000 years old? And then you said, do vaccines cause autism? Did people land on the moon? And that could definitely be taken as you're suggesting that Christians do.
Well, Jonathan, I'm sorry that your panties are in a twist over this, but when I start talking to so the generalization here is not that Christians necessarily don't generalize them as not believing that the earth is flat, but I do generalize a number of Christians as believing that it's young, and then denying things about science. So when somebody tells me they're a Christian and they believe science, I'm going to start asking which parts of science they accept, because in order to be a Christian, to some extent, you have to deny something about science, or you have to deny the foundations of logic and reasoning. But if you're calling in because you think that I do generalize that Christians believe in a flat earth based on me asking you questions about what science you accept, I'm sorry, but you're way out in left field taking a shit for no reason.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I don't believe that. I'm glad you settled that. Now
what did you call for?
No.
What did you call for? Because you asked if I generalized about theists. Then you cite a call from another show. Then you cite a call from this show. Jonathan, what the fuck is your point?
Well, my point is that you adamantly told him he was wrong, that you had never said anything like that. And
correct.
I
haven't.
Right. And then, as I said, given the call that the three of us had, you, Jim, and I, it could definitely be perceived as if you had.
No, it couldn't. It could not be reasonably perceived that I suggested that Christians generally think the earth is flat. That is bizarre bullshit. Goodbye.
Yeah. When you're trying to figure out what somebody does believe, you ask questions. You ask questions based on your experience, what other people who also identify, in this case, as Christians believe. So you can figure out what kind of conversation you're going to have and on from there. That's not the same as saying that it is generalizing. I just don't see how you get there. I mean, how do you, assuming all those things, assuming that they're flat earthers, and assuming what they believe as Christians would be generalizing. So you were specifically not doing that. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Asking questions is not suggesting. And to suggest that it would be reasonable for someone to conclude that I was generalizing Christians as flat earthers and that I went on to deny it in another show. Just bizarre. I don't know why you waste time on this, Jonathan, but clearly you went to episode, date on different shows to try to show there was some massive disconnect, or it would be reasonable to conclude that. Either that, or you're just bored and lonely and wanted to talk to us for a little while, neither of which is the purpose of this show.
Right. We do have a Discord, though.